I'm Lawrence Linker. I'm the co-founder and CEO of XD Academy.
I've gathered great friends here today to talk about crypto.
People confuse themselves, right? I think everybody gets caught up in the price of crypto versus the strength of the underlying technology.
There's different layers of decentralization, right? If you look at the Bitcoin white paper, they don't mention the word decentralized.
It's baffling how often crypto is still confused with blockchain tech. It's completely unrelated, but it's still misunderstood or misconstrued.
Like the Crisco, got rich off the crypto. I'm winning again, you can like it or not.
I'm Lawrence Linker. I'm the co-founder and CEO of XD Academy. Our mission is to provide comprehensive education resources that help people of all levels skill up in crypto and blockchain technology fast. Today I'm sitting here with three good friends who are going to talk to me about a subject I find super interesting: the intersection of large traditional businesses and the Web3 space. So I asked my friends Kareem, Rishi, and Ashok to join me today and share their perspectives. Kareem, please introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me on, Lawrence. So, Kareem, part of KPMG team here in Singapore, under Financial Service Advisory on the Blockchain and Crypto Advisory. KPMG focuses primarily on clients that are in the financial services space, and our job is to help them explore the Web3 and blockchain space.
Very cool. And just in case for anyone who may not know, what does KPMG do? It's one of the biggest companies in the world, yes. But if you're not in like the business kind of space, you might not know what KPMG does.
So KPMG is one of the traditional big four companies, which means we are primarily an auditor. So we audit a lot of stock listed companies, and next to the audit arm, about 10 to 20% of our workforce is focused on advisory services. So helping companies that we do not audit explore new opportunities in verticals that they might not have explored yet, like Web3.
Got it. Very cool. Thanks, Kareem. Rishi, we had a chance to speak a little bit last week. I hope everybody caught that conversation. But for those that didn't, just maybe briefly reintroduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Rishi. I work at Google, specifically Google Cloud. I lead the APAC Web3 specialist team. And our goal is essentially to make it very easy for people to build Web3 products.
Okay, very cool.
For those that don't know, what does Google do?
fair question. Yeah, I feel like Google is one that like if you're watching this
is going to be on YouTube.
You
right?
probably would need to know what Google does. Yeah, Ashok.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ashok. I lead the digital assets and blockchain practice at Mastercard. So I've been there for a little over 4 years. A lot of people really don't know that we're in the space. But we've been kind of dabbling in the space for 4 or 5 years, building a bunch of solutions, stuff close to our heart in the payment space. So what people don't know what Mastercard does, we are a payments technology company.
If you ask the average person, what's Mastercard, they would say it's the credit card company. Right?
But, you know, we've kind of gone away from that space. I mean, obviously, we still do credit and debit, all those cards that you carry in your pocket. But we are the underlying technology underlying the card process, right? The card's actually owned more by the bank that issues it, but we are the network underneath it.
That actually provides the service.
Provides the services. I mean, so anytime you're like stuck, we can actually help you with payments anywhere, not just your credit card, but also like B2B payments. We've got trade financing stuff. We do a bunch of stuff in the payment space that people are not aware of. Blockchain is one of those things.
Yeah, well, let's get people aware.
Yes,
yeah.
That's the whole purpose.
Very exciting. You know, one of the things that really motivated me to want to have this this chat, well, first of all, other than just the fact that I happen to know all of you guys, and I thought this would be a good group, right? I try to find sort of like the hidden stories that I think people will be interested in. I just personally wanted to learn more about people in traditional companies looking at Web3. I'll provide some context. I remember having a conversation when I was at BitMEX, having a conversation with the head of HR about where we said to each other very candidly, what would we do if we were to leave BitMEX? And I shared, I said, well, I think there's kind of two things you can do, right? So you either go like into super startup mode and try to like start a DAO or a protocol or something like that, or you take your skills and say, you know, maybe I'll go into the more corporate and try to be like the blockchain specialist at McKinsey or something like that. I went DAO way, and I think you guys, and I think each of you kind of had a similar juncture in your lives, and you went the corporate way. It's something I could have easily done, by the way. Or not to say it's easy to do it, but
your decision making could have easily gone.
Yeah. But McKinsey, if you're listening, you know, I'm down. Talk to me. We can talk. That's all I'm saying, right? Kareem, maybe tell me about your decision-making process in this.
Yeah, so like you know, I was part of a token project before joining KPMG. I guess there's advantages and disadvantages to joining a big corporate, right? On one hand, you have stability. On the other hand, you're battling with very set-in-their-ways people. So everyone that you talk to that doesn't know much about crypto, they're going to be working at these companies, right? So in many ways, the sale of your services is a very educational sale because the people you talk to are coming to you for advice. So you have to teach them first what can be done, what's possible, the art of the possible, and how to build that and roll that out. But at the same time, you have to convince internal stakeholders that this is actually a good idea. So I'm lucky I didn't join the KPMG practice as the first guy in blockchain advisory, so there was already a bit of the ball rolling there. But I'm pretty sure it was very hard to convince the powers that were at KPMG that we should invest in blockchain, which is why you can see a lot of other big four companies or the top consulting companies struggling, I guess, to build up their practice.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I tried it back in 2016-17 at Merrill, and I was banging my fist on the desk telling everyone to buy Bitcoin and buy Ether and we should do something in the space, and no one would listen. It was too early, right, at the end of the day. And then you saw the hype kind of come and everyone started thinking about it. But the thing with our market is because it's such a new technology, the heights are so high and the lows are so low. So that's the same thing at the big firms, right? Like the highs, they're going to be looking at it a lot more, and the lows they're not. I'll say at Google, it was interesting having the chats with them because the buy-in was there. So was the buy-in there 5 years ago? I don't know, but the buy-in was there, which is what made me. And similar to you, it's I think kind of, you can either go, if you really care about the ecosystem and care about the technology, you can either do it yourself or join a young startup and kind of innovate and so forth, or you can join a big company. And my kind of thought process behind it before joining was, I'm like, how big of a difference can I make if I can make a difference at Google, right? And it could be a huge difference. And the buy-in was there. So then it was more about, okay, what's the value I can kind of bring in over here? So our full team, everyone is not from Google. Everyone is kind of 5 years Web3 experience. So they, in a way, recognized that we wanted specialists. We wanted people who really knew the industry to kind of come in because everyone at Google knows Google extremely well and obviously very smart people. But Web3 is a different beast.
True. I mean, I was where Kareem was sitting 6 years ago. I was in the Big Four doing digital strategy, and they just weren't in the space. They had one person kind of dabbling. But then, I went to a startup, at a blockchain startup here in Singapore. Was there for a year and a half. We raised a bunch of money on the ICO. And then at Mastercard, when I first started, there were 6 of us in the blockchain digital asset space. But we'd already built our own platform. So there were enough people to kind of drive the change. And now we've got 50 plus people, continues to kind of build on that change and building solutions on a bunch of different things that we're doing. So, but I still don't think everybody in the senior management is bought into it because it's not a revenue generating piece yet, right? That is beginning to happen. So as it becomes more revenue generating, I think then the big wigs kind of jump in and say, okay, well, this is something we want to commercialize and take to market.
Yeah.
The hype cycles, I guess, play a massive role, right? When the price goes up, everyone's got that FOMO. Everyone puts money behind it, including, I guess, senior management kind of buys into it, right? But when it drops down, it validates all the naysayers prior, and you're like, yeah, see, good thing we didn't.
But I think people confuse themselves, right? I think everybody gets caught up in the price of crypto versus the strength of the underlying technology.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
And I think the stuff that Rishi's team does, sorry, I'm just kind of jumping in to assume what you guys do, right? But the fact that they're building infrastructure, then companies like ours can kind of come in and build stuff on top of it, right? And the infrastructure layer is the important part, and they don't get caught up in the price of crypto.
Yeah.
No, it was actually a great filtration process for us as well. Like the price of crypto coming down, everyone was blaming crypto winter, but the tech was solid, right? So all the projects that relied on the tech purely, they just kept going. They kept growing.
And I think, look, it's also nice to see the Web3 companies starting to kind of adapt or go with the same flow of all the other startups, tech companies, where everyone's going towards profitability versus growth. So you're seeing it in all startups, and then you're seeing it in Web3 companies too, where it's okay. It's completely fair and normal, right?
But we're seeing a lot of like FIs, right? A lot the traditional FIs trying to explore solutions in the space. I mean, we're one of those, but a lot of our clients, like the traditional banks, are saying, okay, well, how do we capitalize on some of these things? And some of the easy ways is like NFTs for rewards. Kind of jump right in, kind of build stuff on top of it. But then now they're trying to solve some of their larger problems with using blockchain and digital asset technologies. So that's where I feel some of your thought process and some of your advisory stuff really comes into play.
Yeah, they do come to us and ask us a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I think, what you guys are saying now makes me think of something. I talk about this almost every single episode, but like, it's such a big difference telling people that you work in Web3 now as opposed to like a year ago, right? Like I find that so many people go like, oh wow, is that like still a thing? Like shouldn't you be working in AI by now? And I guess something I wish more people understood is that while prices of the assets are not what they used to be, from an exterior point of view, it could seem like a little bit boring. There's a lot of people working really hard right now. Like a lot of the real meaningful work that needed to be done under the surface, this has hardly slowed down, right? I think that's something that I wish more people understood.
It's also like one of the first things, they had already done this at Google, but one of the first things I was doing when we were getting there was breaking it down, because there's digital assets, which is one aspect of it, but then there's gaming, then there's the developer tooling, then there's the infrastructure, like the layer ones and so forth. There's many different parts of it that is not just the digital asset. I think sometimes because of what's in the media or because of what people talk about, or because, to be fair, you're seeing prices go up and down and people can make money and lose money, they focus on that. Like a lot of our focus is on the gaming side because it's a huge amount to do over there. We're seeing massive adoption. It's big over here in Asia. Yeah.
I mean, we're kind of on the horizontal, right? So because for all of the points that Rishi just made, you have to have payments. You got to move money either in a traditional, payments way. You go to a store, you buy something, or banks are moving money from one point to another. Games. How do you on ramp or off ramp funds from a game, either in crypto or in fiat? All of those things are problem areas that people are facing if they're not crypto native, right? So here's where we come in and we say, well, we can help you do all of those things because we are a payments layer which can help you move money not only domestically but cross-border into different people's wallets where you couldn't do so before. So those are the kind of the problems that Mastercard's trying to really solve, is be that underlying network where you can be crypto native for the most part and drive some of those next level type of solutions which you really were thinking about right now.
That sounds like a great future. If I could use crypto as easily as I use my Mastercard, then I think that would be really good. What other opportunities do we see for traditional, and again, traditional sounds like a bad word, right? I don't mean to say like, but like large, well-resourced, influential companies like KPMG, Google, Mastercard. How would you characterize, just speaking for yourself, how would you characterize the opportunity?
I mean, being at a company like KPMG, the companies that we work with, I mean, primarily we do build some things in-house, but primarily we service companies that build things or implement solutions that someone else builds in a company that, at that size, if they come to talk to us, primarily they're usually entities of trust. They're entities that have the trust of their clients. They can't just suddenly change their business model, change their tech stack from one day to the next and start building something from scratch up. It doesn't usually work that way. So you are in a situation where you have to run about two parallel businesses or two parallel tech stacks over the course of 1 to 3 years, and then slowly make that transition to something new. And blockchain is not a small overhaul. Right? If you're trying to revolutionize payments in-house, it's not just like, okay, let's kick off Swift and let's go with something else. It doesn't work that easily. You have to really run that slowly, because a mistake is, or a system going down, is not something that these entities of trust, say, can afford to do or want to do.
So we've been kind of dabbling, for us, is the trust concept, right? Where people see MasterCard as a trusted network. So we were kind of building identity type solutions so that way you know who you're dealing with. So if you look at a a wallet address, you have no idea who's on the other side, right? And they don't know who's on this side. So we're creating that level of security to say, well, you can trust that person on the other end, and same way that you can actually trust where the money's coming from. So we've got transaction monitoring type solutions. We've got things that instill trust on those transactions. So those are the areas that we feel we add the most value.
Yeah. What's the hardest part? Or I would say particularly with relations to partnership between large companies and Web3. And the reason maybe, well, other than the fact that it's sort of the theme of today's episode, the reason that I'm so interested in this is because my personal view, a few things. One, I think that it's absolutely necessary. I think this industry cannot grow without partnering with traditional businesses. And there is this sort of like, I need to do it all myself attitude in crypto that I think is not helping. I think it's not helpful. I also think it's inevitable. I think the big companies are coming. Many of them are already here. They're figuring it out. They're working with guys like Kareem to figure out their strategy. They're hiring Rishi and Ashok to get an early start. You have 50. You started with 8. You have 50 people now. Yeah. I personally think you're going to have 1,000 people in 2-3 years, right? I same for you, Rishi. I really believe this, and so I think in a certain sense, I think you guys really have important roles in sort of shaping what the future of these partnerships look like. At the same time, I would have to imagine that it's difficult because on one side you have the Web3 people who have, many times like libertarian, almost anarchistic roots. They're totally non-cooperative. They want to completely destroy the system and not cooperate at all, even though they may really need it. And then of course you guys, you have people in traditional businesses who I think view crypto as a threat oftentimes, or as something very negative. And you guys are sitting right in the middle, right?
Yeah, okay, this is one way that I think of it as like partnerships, right? Because partnerships, I think, is a massive word that could be used in a variety of different ways. There's transactional partnerships, which is probably what a lot of has been done right now or done in the past, where it's like, okay, we give you this, you give us this, and this is the contract, and go for it. And what I think the Web3 kind of ecosystem needs is more transformational, where it's like, actually, yeah, they do want some big names associated with it, it helps it and so forth, but actually they really need, having a Web3 startup is risk on top of risk, right? Like, it is hard. And there's a lot of, I kind of view it as like, okay, how can we really help these startups so that they can actually focus on their business? And as opposed to coming in and saying, all right, here's a standard contract. This is what you're going to give us. This is what we're going to give you. It's more we have to kind of look at it differently if we want to help the ecosystem. And I think they appreciate it that way too, where it's like, okay, how do we help you really grow your user base? How do we help you tap into our developer network, which Google is huge at? How do we basically help you not worry about XYZ because you have these massive other things to worry about? So kind of viewing it differently. But, that takes time for that kind of mindset to also change.
There was a lot of that initially for us, and not so much anymore, right? We're actually building collaborative solutions with some of these partners. So initially we had our Start Path program, which actually helps small Web3 companies get into the space, and we help them, we kind of guide them. But now we're more on how do we build collaborative solutions that we can take to market within our client base, right? So that way they actually get a solution that they can use. Similarly, we get a solution that we can actually enhance our existing solutions. So there was an initial transactional, okay, you have a really nice API, let me take it kind of stuff. It's no longer the case. We're more like, okay, we've got this, can you build on top of it? So we're actually building some tools where people actually build stuff on top of it and take it to market, right? So those are the things that we see are a little bit more progressive, a little bit more proactive, where people can actually use some of the solutions we're building rather than just building things that may have a problem that could solve.
Yeah. Yeah, we do a lot of like co-build, co-sell. We have our first ever blockchain product that we're building come out that other people can use to make it easy. But it's also interesting what you said, right? Because there's top of the funnel where you have these giant companies that, let's be real, 3 years ago probably didn't even exist. because Web3 goes so quickly, right? 5 years ago, it didn't exist. But then you have all these startups where it's like you can't ignore them because in 3 years they could be the next giant company that didn't exist right now. So you kind of have to focus on both, which I think is difficult because you're focusing on thousands and thousands of companies and you're trying to find what is that next theme, what is the NFTs, DeFi, gaming. It kind of just came and you can't really tell what's going to come next. That's difficult too.
I guess KPMG sees the ecosystem in a bit of a different way, right? It's like we build some solutions in-house, but we also, I guess, offer solutions that exist to our client base, right? And to maintain non-bias and independence, we always have to offer more than one solution that fits the requirement. But with Web3 being so diverse, you don't really have like 2-3 big players that you can pick from. It's always a sure thing. It's not Mastercard, Visa, or Amex. It's like, here are all these small companies that really fit your needs. And here are these bigger ones that are a bit more trusted.
But they're still only like 3-5 years old.
Exactly, right? So it's like, how do you make that call? How do you choose what fits? And more often than not, the companies that we talk to actually build a lot of this stuff in-house themselves, where they invest in companies from the very early stage, and then they're their preferred vendors. But they still come to us to validate those assumptions, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's also we are a regulated entity, right? So navigating to the regulations is also a really big one because like if you look at Asia, there's you're looking at 30, 40 different countries which are here in this region, and each of them have a different regulation. Some of them are non-existent, some of them are very mature. So how do you really navigate some of our solutions for this particular market? So in addition to having core developers, people like me in our blockchain space, and we've also built up our own kind of legal people who understand the space, right? And public policy people who understand the space. Yep. So that way they could come in and say, well, this we can do, this we can't do, or we do a local legal scan to have a better understanding, because we have to continuously be compliant to the regulations, because that is dependent for our other line of the business as well.
Yeah, our key focus of our team is enablement.
Yeah,
because internally we have a lot of extremely smart people, hardworking people who understand Google Cloud, understand a lot, and want and understand Web3, but we kind of come in and enable them to be able to speak to clients on the legal side, really understand where the risks are and so forth.
I was going to say, Sam, regulation, compliance, licensing is something that's huge for us, right? It's one of the reasons why people come to big 4 companies, right? They want that trusted, vetted GRC service.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's probably going to be the next episode, actually. I want to talk to people kind of interfacing on that side, the regulation, compliance, kind of stuff.
It's a tough space. I guess in Singapore we're very lucky, and we see this actually from abroad. I'm pretty sure you guys do too. People come to us and ask us what's Singapore doing? What's the status of things? And can we copy that model? Because once things have settled, it'll probably be the same wherever they are, be it in Europe, in the GCC, etc.
Does it seem like it's really feels to me like it's really taken a long time to.
But it should.
Taking a long time to get there.
It should, and to be fair, Singapore has been very, very good at giving very strict guidelines on how to operate in a sandbox or in that gray zone until licensing gets figured out, rather than doing what I guess Europe did, was do whatever you want, we don't know yet, and then we're just going to ban everything later.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, do you think is that what you think is going to happen?
No, they're going to come up with something, but I think they gave them a bit too much liberty in the early days, whereas Singapore had much more steady guidelines.
I never get asked any questions. I was thinking today, I would like to ask everyone to ask me a question, right? I have things to talk about too.
Okay. So, if you go on to McKinsey, can I do your job?
We'll talk.
All right. Awesome.
I guess what's next for XD Academy? I'm curious. I know that you guys are building quite a bit of stuff at the same time. This podcast being only one of them.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're taking a crack at revolutionizing the way people learn online. One of them is what Rishi mentioned is gaming, right? So when you're operating in this sort of digital space with everything is sort of natively digital, it just really makes sense to give people ownership and control of these digital assets. I think it is an undeniably superior way to manage that ecosystem. And I think education is the other one, right? Education is becoming more and more digital. We confer these different sort of honors and accreditations and stuff on people. We collaborate and interact in digital environments to learn things. Learning pretty much at every level is gamified in some way, whether it's in kindergarten or in university or with apps like Duolingo or when you bring all of these things together and kind of look at it, this is an incredible Web3 opportunity. So I'm just trying to build something that I think people will find exciting in that space.
So what? Revolutionize learning on Web3, but also learning about Web3.
That's the starting point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and if you guys can help me like explain this better, I would be so grateful. But yeah, the idea is learning on Web3, but I think it makes sense to start with learning about Web3, right? Because it's helpful, I think, to know a little bit about, what does it mean to connect a wallet? What does it mean to have this token that you just got for completing this course? Stuff like that. And I think there will be an opportunity to sort of naturally extend to other subjects, maybe science-related subjects at first, and then have the, the sort of organization sort of just naturally extend to whatever subjects people find interesting.
Yeah, makes sense. Please do this fast, because educating everyone who doesn't know anything about Web3 is to make our job a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question then, unless Rishi had a question for you.
I have a question.
You gotta go for it.
I got loads of questions for you.
Yeah.
I got one. Okay, so I have loads, but one that I'm interested in is the content part of it. Right. How much of it, or you're going to start somewhere.
Right.
How much of it is going to be focused on the digital asset financial side of stuff,
right?
Which there's a lot of stuff out there, but there's a lot of bad stuff out there, and there's a lot of need for the good quality stuff. Whereas on the other hand, just as you said, like interacting with a wallet, so more on the technology UI kind of user interface style, where again, I don't think there's that much good stuff out there. And if you don't have that, you can't have the other. So is there a focus on one or the other to start with?
Great question. So this is something we think about a lot, right? And we work with some really, really smart people to think about how much to concentrate on different areas, what to focus on first. You cannot deny the appeal or the demand for people who want to know how to make money in this space, right?
Exactly.
And I'm okay with that, right? I don't plan on preying on that, right? But people need to make a living. People are financially motivated. You can make money in Web3 in a lot of different ways, and so I think we want to accommodate those learners that have that motivation, right? But I think that there is a lot of other stuff that is interesting and important to know. There's a lot of different learner profiles, people who just want to build, people who want to, they don't want to miss out, people who are interested in crypto, but they just want to be able to feel like they could do it safely.
They want to be empowered, right?
They want to feel empowered. Yeah. And if you look at even like the first kind of slate of content that we have coming out in the next couple months, there's quite a lot of content around not just like the investment opportunity. We have some very good content, I think, around the investment opportunity as well, and how to think about, how to create a thesis around your crypto investments. But there is also stuff around just the essentials of blockchain, right? The basics of how blockchains work and how different blockchains work differently, and that kind of stuff.
I'm pretty sure the financial side is the primary hook why people even look this stuff up in the first place, right? It's like my friend made 10 G's overnight. Like, what happened? And that's how you get into it. But yeah, focusing on the underlying, or the infrastructure at least, is helpful.
I think it's really important, and I think that a lot of the best financial opportunity in the space comes from a deeper understanding of the whole ecosystem. Right? Because it's like, if you go back a few weeks ago, how would you have been able to predict that Pepe Coin was going to moon, right? I mean, there's some stuff that there's just no way to do it, right? But if you're equipped with some basic tools that can allow you to look at a few different projects, right? So let's say you have, just like any other kind of investment case, you have identified a need. You are looking at a couple different, potential providers of that need. The need like maybe a faster blockchain that has a higher throughput and lower fees, right? And you think that there's a few potential protocols that can meet that need, and you want to do some further analysis to be able to invest your money into one of these chains. Being empowered to actually do that analysis yourself is something that can be profitable for you. We want to encourage people to look at it like that, encouraging people to do their own research, so to speak.
How do you make your courses more interactive, right? I think, like,
yeah, I love
I'm
this
old,
question.
so like I have a 3-year-old.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty old.
He can learn how to do stuff really simply, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I have to kind of watch it and then do it rather than just kind of read about it.
Right.
I think it's a little bit easier for me to grasp if I, execute, do a wallet, do a transaction.
Yeah, me too.
So when you build your courses, I think it's a suggestion in addition to a question, right? How do you really make some of those things happen? Because there is so much stuff out there, right? How do you pick something that you say, okay, well, how do I interact with it? So that way people feel comfortable in learning more about it and not saying, oh, well, this is too difficult, to buy an NFT and move it into your wallet. It's gotten easier, but it's still, if you're a crypto novice, it's something that you don't want to do and you're not just used to. So how do you kind of create that interactive educational experience where people learn and they can understand it really well?
Yeah, great question. So something that we talk about a lot, and we show like in our deck when we're talking to investors, on one of the first slides, we show this pyramid shape, the diagrams, a bit about how people tend to learn, right, and what we consider like what learning progression looks like for most people. And this is, I've been an education entrepreneur for, I guess, over a decade now. And so I think a lot about how people learn. And I'll say also that I think my experience, I come from like the test prep space, which is interesting if you think about it, because there's almost no other industry where you get paid. So your financial reward is so directly tied to how well people are learning. Right?
Interesting.
At Harvard, like, if you don't learn anything, like, they don't care. They still get their tuition, right? Like, this is true for almost every.
But you're the one who made GMAT harder, so you stay. It's your fault.
It's me, guys like it is guys like me's fault. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. There's no denying that. But if you can go to people, or more likely, if people say like, "Hey, I worked with Lawrence's firm." And I went up 150 points in a month, like, you'll get business, right? So we're always thinking about how do we get people to learn, right? And so my partner at the time and we did a lot of research into this, and the initial phase of learning for most people tends to be very passive and very visual. So the way that people learn most effectively initially is actually visual. You're gonna understand something more based on how you see it than from hearing it or any other way, right? This is, you think about the most common example. Someone says, "Show me a picture." Draw me a picture, right? Or in like when we all use PowerPoint, right? I actually hate PowerPoint, but like everyone expects, like I'm like, you can't understand what I'm saying right now. You need me to draw a box, and like two boxes with an arrow between them or something. But that's what people want, right? So first is highly passive visual. The next layer is more, I guess you could say, like active, involved, and it's auditory, right? And then you have like kinesthetic, discussion, and then all the way at the base of the pyramid is where you are actually teaching and you're instructing others, and that is actually the when you've mastered something. The process of teaching others is when you mastered something, right? So, long way of getting back to your question. What we're trying to do is entice people to come and learn by presenting them with like very attractive visual material that they'll want to start to learn, and then encourage them to go further down the pyramid. We don't provide sort of like the full stack just yet, but we're very, very keenly interested in helping people go down there. So for example, we have like our master's series courses, which are just absolutely beautiful. They look like little mini documentaries, right? But they're quite light, You'll definitely learn something, but they're quite light. Then we have what we call like our core content courses. Now, these are actually interactive. They're on-screen, clickable. These are much more curriculum-driven courses that are being taught by academics, right? So they're taking you through a specific learning journey. They have a methodology and a pedagogy to what they're doing. Now, ultimately, we'd like to be able to do some more gamified stuff and definitely create opportunities for users on our platform to be the ones to do the teaching themselves.
Well explained.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Let us know if you're some educators, man.
Yeah. Because as you mentioned as well, Kareem, like you're doing a lot of education yourself, right? If there's one course that you wish that everybody could take before you had to talk to them, obviously crypto, blockchain, Web3 related course.
One course.
What would it be? What would you wish people could understand before?
Crypto isn't blockchain. That's probably the base one. It's baffling how often crypto is still confused with blockchain tech, right? We can walk into, we'll take a made up example. I could be walking into a meeting where we want to use blockchain to increase efficiency in operations or like logistics. And one of the questions at the end of the presentation is still going to be like, yeah, what about crypto? What if the price goes down? It's completely unrelated, but it's still misunderstood or misconstrued.
Yeah. Well, maybe for everyone's benefit right now, not because I totally get it, but how are crypto and blockchain?
Killing me, man.
Blockchain is the technology.
Exactly. Crypto is a token that enables.
But don't you need the crypto, right?
No, not necessarily.
No?
Not
How do you have a blockchain without a token?
All the permission ones, you don't need a token. But like if you have a captive, like say an internal blockchain, you don't need a token to run it. These are only public blockchains that you need to use to deploy.
Think about all the self-identity stuff
Yeah.
that all the governments are trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Where you have your identity on a blockchain and it's there. Or like sometimes you see use cases of like your doctor's records on a blockchain, so it's always there, it's verified, no one else can ever change it. There's nothing related to a coin per se.
Oh my God, I have so many follow-up questions. I'm so afraid that people are going to realize how stupid I am right now, but I'm just going to go for it. How could you possibly keep this network secure?
So take a step back before you do this. The token for crypto, for example, essentially is an incentive mechanism to make you as a user of that token program on that blockchain use it more. Right? Using the tokens, transacting in them essentially keeps the blockchain alive, running, and verifying itself. If you have a closed blockchain or a private or proprietary blockchain, you don't need those things. You don't need incentive systems because you operate the entire node yourself. Essentially, you only need a keeping of record, which blockchain is very, very good.
Then why use a blockchain?
But blockchain is just a database, right? You can store stuff on it, and it's guarded. Basically, once you put it in there, you can't change it because once you change it, the actual hash changes, right? So basically, it's just a database in essence. You store stuff in it, and it's always there. It never goes away. That's why the doctor's records and the university records are there. So you know if somebody's messed with the fact that you went to Harvard instead of Howard, something like that, you know something happened.
And this is a good segue into what I believe that I would like for more people to know. And it's not a course per se, but I think, look, there's different layers of decentralization, right? So I think the term like, hey, XYZ is fully decentralized is used a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is you could have, for example, decentralization of wallets, but all the nodes are centralized.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, there's layers, right? So, or you could have, decentralized smart contracts for a respective USD coin. But the reality is you put a blacklist out there that XYZ can't buy this coin. It's kind of centralized again, right? So there's different layers of decentralization. If you look at the Bitcoin white paper, they don't mention the word decentralized. They say peer-to-peer, they say trustless or trust. The whole point of it is that you can't go to a third party and you're removing that third party and hence it becomes decentralized. And you see a lot of stuff where it's decentralized, but there's a certain point where that third party is coming in.
Yeah.
So there's different layers over there. And I think it's very important for people to understand that because true decentralization is really the use case for blockchain. And without that, you have to really question, is it needed?
Yeah. Wow. This is blowing my mind. I feel like I need to say, maybe because I've never said this before, I'm a moron, okay? I am an education entrepreneur. I hope I can produce something that everyone will be very happy with. I don't personally understand this stuff. Don't try to learn from me. That's why I have other people on here, okay?
I feel like that was a good course section right there to suggest for everyone to watch.
Yeah. That would be like the trailer, right? Yeah. Okay. What else, guys? What else can we talk about?
But I mean, it's also like, if you think about it, the like blockchain from the time that we've been in there has evolved, right? Like you had
sitting here today for this conversation.
Well, I'm sure it has, right? But like when I first started, I mean, there were like one, maybe 2 or 3 chains out there, some which are permissioned, some which are public, and now there's tons of chains. And like, what are some of those layer 0, layer 1, layer 2s? What do those really mean, and what can you do with it? Is it purely just the ability, the speed, the cost? So those kind of like simplified knowledge, it's even good for me because as I said, the evolution is so fast and so quick. We don't know all the time. I'm constantly reading, I'm watching stuff on YouTube. So if for people to really understand some of these things is a key, because the selection of what you pick, and you don't have to pick one, you can pick more than one, right? To just for them to understand some of the basics, I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think that evolution, it's evolving so fast because you have so many people interested in it. You have so many developers in it. You have so much research going into it. Like ZKEVM just came up, a couple of years ago. It's still evolving, it's still developing, and now so many people are coming into it. So much money is going into it.
Yeah.
It's constantly changing. And like another thing that I find very interesting is the competition between all the layer 2s, because there's just so much out there, and they're all doing something different, all trying to solve the same problem to make it cheaper, to make it more secure, and so forth. And it's good, it's healthy competition, but eventually it'll come to a point where there's it needs to somewhat get consolidated. But it's just like the early days of any technology, right?
You need to tell them what ZKVM is.
Yeah, so we're getting a little crypto native here. I kind of want to. I wouldn't mind digging in on some of this stuff though, because I feel like it would be interesting to folks. But yeah, so how would you explain ZKEVM to your mom?
Not prepared to explain that one to my mom. I don't even think the people who are researching it it's just not evolved yet.
We can segue into this though. I mean, it is very interesting. Like you said, there's a healthy competition and you got a lot more chains popping up. But what I find even more interesting is where these chains are coming from and with what goal they have in mind. It's a lot more use case driven.
Yeah.
You're getting massive companies throwing a lot of money at developing their own chains, their own blockchain. You got JPM with JPM Coin, JP Morgan, a bank.
Yeah.
With JPM Coin for their proprietary, for their own use cases.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot more of that, which is interesting. So I feel like in the early days of blockchain, a lot of them were more like, well, let's, make the banking or the payment system better and trustless and decentralized and peer-to-peer. And now it's a lot more, it's like, well, we have to be regulatorily compliant. And to be that, we need to abide by certain rules, like travel rule, like identity, like clawbacks, like freezing transactions, all of these things that you couldn't initially do on, say, Bitcoin blockchain.
Yeah.
I mean, when we first started in the space, we actually built our own blockchain from scratch, right? Because what was out there just didn't fit our need. Mm-hmm. So we were able to just kind of build our own thing. But then now there's so much stuff out there. We're like, okay, well, we don't need to kind of maintain our own blockchain because we can actually move one level higher and build solutions on top of a bunch of different blockchains, right? So, things are just evolving so quickly. It'll be good to really understand what some of those things are happening and why they're happening.
Yeah, I'd like to understand some of this stuff better myself.
I also kind of take it back a step and say, since this is like education, XD and so forth, like there's a certain level of it where it's education. There's also a certain level where it's just usability, right? Mm-hmm. Where at the end of the day, it just needs to be easier to use. Yeah. And people don't necessarily need to know that they're... I always go back and forth on this, and a lot of people have talked about this, is do people need to know that they are interacting with their own wallet and so forth? Like how when first the search bar came, and people just had to get adopted to HTTP or www, right? Like it wasn't going away. And they're like, you have to get used to that, otherwise you can't use the internet. It's the same thing. Or is there a way to basically have it so that people don't even know they're interacting with it per se. And I think it's going to have to happen in the next couple of years, one or the other.
Agreed. I mean, there are a lot of products out there that are already built on blockchain and people have no idea. These are retail products, that loyalty point systems that are
Loyalty
built on
point
blockchain.
system is a good one. Gaming is another one.
Yeah, and you don't need to know as the end user. It doesn't make a difference, really. It's just new tech. It's more interoperable, makes it a lot easier to deploy for the issuer, but fundamentally as the end user, it doesn't change anything for you.
So I go back and forth on, is it important for that end user to recognize they're using a wallet which is theirs and they own it, or is it okay for them to not know that?
It's important for the user that reads the fine print and wants to know that his assets are his.
but why, right? I mean, like basically, if you're, let's say, it'll be just pure basics. Like if you want to do send money from one point to the other, like, do you even know how your money moves today? You don't, right? So what difference does it make if it's a blockchain network or if you're using Swift or whatever else that you could be using today? Right? And to your point, like if you look at evolution of just the UI of some of these little protocols and little programs which are out there, it's completely shifted. I mean, before it was just kind of like a black screen with green stuff, and then you have search bars, right? Now you've got a complete UI shift where you don't even need to know what your underlying tech is.
Yeah. No, I agree with you guys. I think, first of all, in terms of onboarding people, product trumps education every time, right? A product that people just can use and it's intuitive and they love it and it works is better than explaining to people how to use something that's hard to use, right? Now, that said, and this is why long term we hope XD Academy can get to a place where it is a tokenized platform where people can come to learn about anything, and people can be rewarded for teaching others about anything. But I do think that there's a sort of a special relationship between education and crypto in my mind, because it also has to do with money. So, like for example, I mean, this is an educated crowd, but think about how many people in the world don't understand net present value, right? Or compound interest, or time value of money. Some few simple concepts that we take for granted very, very much, that if you don't understand, that you literally, you're really at a loss. You're really going to be a victim to the system, right? And I think that one of the things that has always attracted me to the blockchain and crypto community is that I think it can be a tool to fight back against some of the, I'm getting a little, I know this is the corporate crowd. I don't want to get too political here, but, I think that there's a massive opportunity for people to be more empowered with their finances through blockchain. And for some of this stuff, people kind of have to understand some of what happens.
If you look at the fintech investment landscape back in 2008, 9, give or take, financial literacy was one of the huge investment areas for a lot of the biggest VCs and PE firms, because they saw there was a massive gap where people just didn't understand. And in some markets, especially more than others, financial literacy is so key for progress, right? It gives you access, it gives you those tools. Now we're in blockchain, or at least in the broader blockchain space, it's happening all over again, because the infrastructure is different and the where you find information also has changed. And there is no real center source.
Yeah, one of the reasons it got adopted so quickly by, like, the technical side, anyone who's technical loves it and will go into it because it's a new technology. But for the non-technical people, it's because the information was available on YouTube and so forth, right? Where you didn't necessarily have to go to a school to learn.
Or Vimeo. Or
Reddit or wherever.
Always be closer.
But I mean, the point is there's so much information out there, right? I mean, like, how do you really navigate to say, well, what is it that you really want to learn? I mean, like, to your point about, NPVs, and I mean, but if I want to calculate a basic, what my mortgage rate is going to be, or how much my car is truly going to cost me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's tools out there now. I plug in the numbers, and they'll give me an answer. I don't really need to know some of those financial terms.
Most people won't know what to search to find that tool.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think
even people are living in Singapore and it's different, right? Like when you look at the whole world, most people don't know what to search to find that tool. Agree that the tools are out there for everything.
Yes,
There
and
now.
there's tons of information, right? I mean, if you look at YouTube, really, you just go type in another plug here, but you type in anything and you can get so much information. How do you really sift through it and say,
Yeah,
well,
you have to
this
know-
is valuable. This is some guy, 4 guys sitting in a bar and talking about stuff, right? So and you don't know what's actually true and what's not. And how do you really
That's
believe
fair.
it?
That's where the empowerment comes in versus like literacy. It's empowering you to know what to search and what to actually ask. What's the right question to ask,
exactly.
right?
I think the basics of like saying, okay, here's how some of these things works. Then you can actually build on top of it and search the right things.
Yeah. I'm a Socratic method believer, right? I think the greatest education you can give someone is to inspire them to seek more knowledge.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully we've been able to achieve that today. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. I want to thank my guests, Kareem, Rishi, and Ashok for joining me today. If you want to chat more about any of the subjects that we talked about today, please join us on our Discord that's open now at dsc.gg/xdacademy. And I look forward to seeing you next time.